Hello guys, good evening. Today is January 18th. Welcome to another episode of Ripster Daily Trade Recaps and Teachings. Those who are new to my YouTube recaps, these are the recaps from my trading community. Any idea I share in my community, any trades I take, or any trade ideas I give to my community, or any trade ideas from our trading floor. So we recap and we try to learn from those setups, and I try to teach what we learned. And then of course we discuss what were the setups we played. So let's start. Before I start, my routine every day is I'm up 1 hour before the market opens, and I'm working on all the news. I go through all the news sources. I look at what is gapping up, what is gapping down, what is the main sector that's moving, anything that has a big news. We do what we call as a wake up summary. I share with everyone in the morning, and I look at downgrades, upgrades, and you see here what is moving the market in pre-market, and then I create my watch list for the day. And this was today's watch list for the day, and we focus mainly on three things: any upgrades, downgrades, earnings. This is earning season, so we focus on the earning plays. And then of course we have market plays, which we play every day, and I create market levels for my community. As you see, many levels. These levels help us execute, especially with something which has news. For example, Apple, which I'll talk about in a bit, which has an upgrade today. It helps us, right? And AMD NVDA, which were, as you see, they were gapping up, and that gives us an idea if they want to push or not. If you see NVIDIA pivot I gave at 4575, that rejected in the morning. So we will discuss all those trades and we'll see how these levels panned out. So there's a couple of losers, a lot of winners that we have to discuss today. So let's start quickly, and here we go. So one thing I want to discuss before I start. Today the theme was semi-sector, right? So today the theme was semi-sector. Before the market opened, I told everyone that today it's all about semiconductors. A lot of things were gapping up. So the key was we don't want to get it stuck. So I didn't take any longs at the open. I was patient, right? I know a lot of people want to make money right at open. You just need to be patient. I didn't take any semiconductor play right at the open. I was waiting. I did like few, which we will talk about it. I did give AVGO, and we maintain a semi list that I share with everyone. So those are the semiconductors that are basically the whole sector you see here, right? So I focus on that watch list. This is what I shared with everyone, and we will discuss few of those semi plays, how they worked out. We will talk about TSM. I want to talk about AVGO, and of course we'll talk about AMD NVDA as well, which has been running for this into this semi sector. Because kind of everybody knew that Taiwan Semiconductor is going to do a good report. So everything was kind of pumped up into this earnings. So that's why you saw a big push, and then some pullback and consolidation, and then run at the end of the day. All right, so let's start. So I want to start with SPY and QQQ All Day Guidance. Whatever happens, I'm always guiding on SPY, QQQ, and voice in first couple of hours. Then rest of the day, I'm continuously updating everybody about the market, in my alerts tab. So today we were gapping up. We were definitely there was no confirmation of this breakout of pre-market highs at open. So definitely didn't want to get trapped in the gap up. So I was a little patient. Although I was watching for any gap fill, if we get a gap fill on the market, SPY tried to fill the gap. I was in a B- short, but it kept getting bought here. And I did talk about this level, that there is a buyer here. I talked about this all morning. So I said there's a buyer at 47.30, right? So whole morning I was telling everyone that there is a buyer at 47.30. 473.40, and it's not letting us through. I was reading the tape, sharing with everyone, and right from that level, it pushed back up, right? So it was a kind of chop. Then it pulled back down, again bouncing from 34.50, pushed again rejecting from this level, pulled back again. So it was all chop, and then it was a short under the clouds, which we did trade. I did talk about this short, which I gave everybody in middle of the day. If you look my guidance here, let's see, wow. And we did trade it in the SPX SPY room, where it was breaking 512, bear flag breakdown, and then it was breaking down under 3450 clouds, and it held a certain level. Buyers came back in, swiped it back over 512 clouds, and I did give there was a price alert which I mentioned that came in here. So there was a bearish alerts. I gave the bearish alerts, so we scalped downside on the SPY. Then there was a bullish alerts. SPY pushed back over, bullish back over that upper range. You see there, right? Back over the clouds. And I explained it today in the community as well how to trade them. And that bullish push went all the way from here to the high of the day, and then I said we are going to break out, and I guided live on this breakout. I even shared my trade that I took on that breakout scalp, and then we broke out, and then everything broke out, and then we pushed, retested, and went up again. So in the morning, trying to trade this anywhere here, we would have lost money, right? So like I lost starter on this gap filled in game, but I made money later because I had clear level of risk. I had this breakdown, I made some money here, 3450 breaks, and when this buyer gave up, I scalped a little bit. When this buyer gave up 473.40, then I made a little bit, right? So rest of it I did send the price alerts, but I traded this one, right? So I had like 3-4 winning trades. I had one losing trade on SPY, but overall guidance was on point. Everything about our system, as long as over 3450 bullish buys, under 3450 bearish buys, over 3450 bullish buys. So it can't get more clearer than that, guys. And this guidance was there whole day, right? All day guidance, and and I did get a lot of encouraging feedback. Our traders in SPX floor were really doing good, and Jai was really helping out everybody else. So yeah, so that was good. Good guidance, good winners in the community. Everybody traded well. I urge everyone, if you want to trade SPY, SPX, although I'm planning to do a webinar soon, you should focus on it. Like, you should study up how these options work, how SPX works. You can build a good living on that as well. But anyways, good guidance on the market. It helped us manage our other plays, our marketplace. We were able to manage, keeping eyes on the SPY QQQ. This is always on my screen. All day I'm sharing the screen, and it was really helpful. All right, let's start look at some of our plays. All right, so I want to first look at, I talked about the semiconductors, right? How AMD and what was the NVDA, they were being pushed into Taiwan semiconductor earnings, and how they were pumped up, right? So let's see how did we trade it today, right? Although in the morning AMD, it was, let's look at our levels now. Let's see what were our levels. Our levels on AMD were 160.6650 was the resistance pivot, 160 area was a support, 166.50. So it broke out, right? Definitely broke out. If you traded the amateur move, you made some. If you traded the amateur move over the pivot, the morning amateur push, right? And then it pulled back, and we were keeping eyes on the market. We keeping eyes. Market was choppy, but AMD started to show the relative weakness. It was showing the relative weakness. I didn't touch AMD till then, even for a B- short. My interest came at 11 a.m. when it started to break down under the clouds. That's when I gave up an idea. I gave an idea to my community. If fails the cloud, will fade more into the gap, but market needs to break to help. NVIDIA 475 failed again, but it's still over 3450. So basically we look both at AMD and NVIDIA. So anyways, once it's breaking down, so that is the idea to trade it. So you see it pulling down, you get a starter on the bounce, get a starter, it's failing again, you add more, and then your risk should be on the high of this 10-minute candle. You can find a level from this area as well, and then it's all about the gap fill, right? So the first target is usually let's see the first target. If I can extend it to high of the day as well, or I can extend it to the opening price, does not matter. You just put it as you want, right? Usually it's from the close to the open price, and first target is one of the fib levels, 0.5 fibs, and then it's 0.161 fib. My target was 161. I gave everybody that target, but when the market started to fail, and I clearly said, if market gives up, look what I said, if market pulls back, it's going to give the best move, right? I can't be more clear than that. Somebody was in the room new today, was like, hey, you do not give alerts. This is better than alerts if I think about it, right? I don't just tell you buy this, buy that. You're taking an idea and you're executing, but I hold the hand through that idea, right? What's happening, what's not happening. So AMD was a big winner gap fill. Even after 160, it kept failing. I told everybody do not buy. I did tell everyone it's still heavy. Even at 1 o'clock, I was saying it's still heavy, and it dipped to 158 before it bounced with the market, right? You could have traded it later over 512 clouds and risk this 160 level again. So that level becomes your risk when you get back in, so that is your risk. Even if you risked, like say, $1 here, you made $2-3 to the upside, and you made something on the options. So this was the AMD guidance, guys. I personally think this was a great guidance, and of course I'm on voice, a lot of things I can't say. And let's look at NVDA guidance. So let's look at NVDA. Okay, so NVDA first at open, it was if you look at the first candle, what was the resistance I gave was 575. It was an amateur pullback for a scalp. It was a decent pullback if you're fast enough from 570 to 569. And of course, it's B minus because it's bouncing from 3450. So it bounces from 3450, and then of course, for me to be getting crazy bullish, I want to see the 575 breakout. What was the level I gave you in the pre-market? Let's see. I gave you clearly a level of 575 on the resistance pivots on NVIDIA, and it rejected that, bounced to 3450, right? Let's see if I have the level on the support as well. The level on support, I have 567.50. 568 is also there, another pivot, 567.50. So it was somewhere here, and 568, I had a pivot at a 568. Even resistance pivot can become a support pivot, 568.35. So 568.35, around here was my pivot. Anyways, it was a bullish trend, right? So you couldn't really go crazy on the short, but it was rejecting my 575, bouncing, and it was still bullish. And at that time I said it's still bullish. I did say that it's still bullish. 575 is the breakout. If you're trying to trade that breakout, it's high risk and you're losing because it's not able to break out. How many times did it try? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And then I said if market pukes, it can come down, right? And I said 475 failed. If 3450 fails, you can try to scalp to the downside as well. You can try to scalp NVIDIA to the downside as well. And as soon as it came under 3450, right here, 12 a.m. and then that was the time. I did say warn people not to short here, but right after I said that, then it push, came down onto the clouds, creating a bear flag. 12:20 is when I said B minus short scalp. Your stops over the clouds, guys. If you can't find anything, stop should be 10-minute 50 EMA. Simple as that. And then even NVIDIA, the gap fill from that bearish alert gave you 560 over $10, right? $10 share. You risked how much? Maybe $1, $1.50, and how much did you make, right? So again, that were our midday trades that came in handy today. So we did good there. So just wanted to tell you how the system works, right? I was not trying to short blindly. Even if I tried to short it under this, there was so much range. There was so much range to cover it, right? There was such a big range to the gaps usually fill. So that's why I focused on AMD NVIDIA. Why did I tell everybody about AMD NVIDIA? Because I knew there's a lot of range. We can make a lot of money there, risking and proper and getting a good reward. Let's go to the next one. All right, so just want to talk about Apple. So what was the Apple today? So Apple, I shared the news plan in the pre-market. The news plan was Apple is upgraded to buy. by Bank of America. Tier 1 analyst I cover in my webinars. When Tier 1 analyst upgrades, the stock moves. JPM, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, all of these are Tier 1 analysts, and Bank of America was also one of them. And what was the plan? I gave the resistance pivots 187.40, 187.25. Clearly, if it breaks out and it's over the EMA clouds, if it breaks out, it's over the EMA cloud, it's the long idea, right? So clearly, that's what we want to do. And Apple all day over the pivots went on for a big run. So, and for the swing, quickly want to talk about swing. I also want to cover the Apple, the swing. Okay, so let's look at it, right? So I had a swing on Apple. Where it is, let's find out. So here you go. Apple swing stops at 180, proposed entry 182, stops at 180. Even the other day when we were selling off, I told everybody that that's your stop, I'm going to hold out. We were close to stopping out, but we did not. And look at it, and our first run from 180, if you log the 50 rest, 50% have rest of them here, and then your Apple swing worked out today. Big push over 50 EMA. Even after pushing over 50 EMA, it pushed to 190, and you got a nice move. So you have to respect your stops. So that was a big win for community, both on the swing or on the trades. The levels were clear, the plan was clear. Very proud of Apple trade. I personally did not day trade it, but very happy for the community and my Twitter followers who followed this idea. Okay, I was talking about semiconductors earlier, so let's me quickly talk about, I want to talk about TSM, right? So TSM, when it opened right away, it was not giving me any entry to trade it, right? So I did not touch it because I don't have a clear entry how to trade here, right? I mean, you could have B minus short it, but it's not an A plus setup. I extended from EMA Clouds. I don't know what to do with it. And of course, you can trade the dips too, because my support levels that I gave in the morning on TSM was 107.50 and the pivots were 111.50, right? So that pivot was also not clearly breaking. It was kind of rejecting, and it never really came down to my support levels to have me confidence to take a trade. It was range bound. Yeah, maybe it gave a midday trade, end of the day trade that I didn't see bounce over the support and the EMA clouds, and but I didn't touch it. So TSM was kind of scratched from, but I was looking at the other plays that I could trade, and that's what I'm going to discuss next. What were the plays we did? So let's look at them. I personally liked the AVGO. So I on the voice mentioned AVGO, and again it was my list that I gave everybody, and AVGO, it's all about semiconductors today, right? It was more on the voice, so you won't see a good lot of guidance there. But let's see AVGO pre-market resistance pivot 1126, and you go long because today is the news. Today semiconductor is hot, so you go long there, right? So 1126 broken, and I was trade Lotos, right? And my target was 1150. I gave the target 1150 and I said Lotto is the best mover, even on the voice, and we hit 11. We were $4 short on our target and stopped out here at 512 break. I did not take the later end of the day 3450 bounces, but that was a good one too. So yeah, so that was AVGO. So let's look at another one. So other one I tried to trade was ARM. I really liked it, but ended up losing on it because I did not really take scale out or take a profit. I really liked ARM at the open. I told everybody I like ARM, and so much I'm focusing on so much plays. I can't trade everything, but I liked ARM. I told everybody that ARM is a good setup, and I tried to take it a little later and closer to 10 a.m., which is not really always the best entry. But regardless, if semiconductors held the strength, we would have pushed. So I took ARM, a little later. Those who took early was good. So I waited for this pullback, so that pullback, and that's where I took it, and it pushed, and I gave it a little time for a breakout over 75. It did not, then broke 512, and it was time to take loser, $2 per share loser there. And a little less than $2 per share, but it's okay. We try. So we try to see what works, what don't. So I gave idea to my community to trade ARM. It did not work, and we move on. All right, I'm going to talk about FAST fast. So fast again was our pre-market news play. What was the plan? The plan on fast was bullish to neutral, support pivot 64.20, resistance pivot 66.65, 65.66. So what did fast do? So let's go back again. Sorry, need to see my levels. Okay, so 64.20, right? So that was my support level, 64.20, and of course it didn't go back right there. But at the open, I said I'm bullish bias, right? I told everybody it's a bullish bias. I gave the plan, and then when I was on the voice, I told everybody it's going to make the next leg over the pre-market highs. And why did I like fast, right? So let's see why fast was one of my good setups, because it was an A+ all-time high breakout. This is an A+ setup that I love. That's I keep teaching about fast all the time, like not about the fast, about these A+ setups or all-time highs. So we are long and making leg. I gave the 68 as my first target. I gave that, right here, and then I gave stops of 65.50, right? So I gave you stops of 65.50. 68 was my first target. Even if you added at 10 a.m., let's say you added a little later, right? Even then, you were risking like $1.50, and then you made $1.50. 1-to-1, not always the best, but still green is green. So it was flagging. Then you can see my timestamp guidance. First target met, lock there, move the stops, break even, right? You add here, I gave you the stops, you add here, and then make sure you lock your profit. I keep telling them, keep telling everybody, at 60, I really expected it to push higher, but then it pulled back, and it's part of the game. Big volume seller came, it dumped it right back, and when it broke that 512, I closed the position, right? So I closed the position, and it's still profitable because locked half. Could have been crazy, no, but it's fine. If the morning traders went, there was extension on EMAs here, so that was expected. So I still like it. I think it can make a day 2 move, so keep an eye on it. We can put some price alerts on it. Day 2 moves. So let's look at next one. Okay, let's look at our another play we did for today. This is called DFS. It's called DFS. Plan was simple: bullish over 99, bearish under 99. That's it. Not want to use 100 level there, because 100 psychological, because the 99 was more cleaner level. So that's why I said everybody bullish over there and bearish over there. And for the start, it was working out nicely. It was bouncing off 99s. It was showing me it was actually showing me, like, it was showing me the what was it? It was showing me reversal over the clouds, just like I teach of all my repeatable setups, gap down reversals, and then it was pushing, it dipped to 99, right? So let's see, let's go, let me take you in a smaller time frame so you understand this trade, right? So it opens at 101, right? It pulls back, bounces right from 99, the level I gave you guys, and then from the 99 it even swiped up till 104. So that entry was not bad for the long side, so that was from the pre-market plan. And then it gave us a short setup at 11 a.m. I saw it come under the cloud. I said cloud short setup under the 100 psychological short setup. So this was the main setup that came up. You risk 100, add here, or risk right before the 100, 50, 40 cents, and what was my target? I said target was pre-market lows, and let's see what it met, and it did meet 96.52. This right here, I had a price alert set on these levels. From you shorted from 99.50, you got 96.50. That's a $3. And if you risk barely 50 cents, so that's 1 to 5 risk reward, guys. So that's what I'm talking about. So DFS, very good idea. If you listened, it was all about this 99 level. Closer to the levels you trade, better the trade. Further you levels from you go, higher risk. So another one I quickly want to discuss is which was working nicely, but it became a loser and then it became a winner. So what was the plan on HUEM? So plan initially, if the pre-market on HUM was, I said it can be minus bounce, but the risk was 380 initially, but it already pushed before the market open. And the pivots were 408 and 4012, right? 408 and 4012. So let's see what happened. So as soon as it starts to push, I said it's on watch versus 390, right? And I said I'm scalping long. I said that, like scalping long. I added there, I saw the strength, I used the 390 stops, I started scalping. I think some of the traders joined little late, and I held on, because it's a lot of range. I mean, it's a $50 range, and if I'm risking, let's say I'm risking $5-6 to make $20, that's a good risk reward, right? So you have to risk according to the stock. So it was working fine. We even pushed to 402, added at 397s, pushed to 402. I was holding. Then it started to make lower lows. And then, it broke 512, and then I stopped out. I took a loss there. And I still said I'm keeping eyes on it, right? So I did give 390 risks to somebody who wants a bigger returns. If smaller sizes, it could easily dipped back to 390 and pulled out. So see, I kept talking about 390 though, right? But I did not notice the initial bounce. If you see, where did it bounce? 390.58. I gave the risk of 390. Look here, 390. And I kept talking about that risk on the voice too. Only reason I took it off, because I wanted to wait for it later, and it did come up later. Watch what happened. Bounce from 390 level, came back over the clouds. You get back in, you use the same stops or candle lows, 392s, 394s. You use them. As it starts to work for you, you add into it. You even can add over the 400 break. You just take the first profit here, still holding the 512 candle, no need to cut. You scale in. I gave everybody target of 514. So there's my target. Let's see. Okay, yeah, I said 0.5 fib is at 414. 0.5 fib was at 0.414. So that's where it was. 0.5 fib was the 414 target. It met 414 target to the point, rejected, still holding trend. Tomorrow it's a day 2. Some traders are still holding. I usually don't share here, but Nancy made full years of our community membership in one day. It's encouraging to see that people do that, because we not being an alert service, but people benefiting from my guidance, it means a lot. So yes, so HUM was a loser in the morning, big winner end of the day. I'm not going to spend too much time on Tesla, guys. I just want to say that we were not long Tesla today. Win came in, he said short his versus 218, and I'm just going to go to my pivots, right here my pivots. What was the pivot I gave? 217.20. That's the pivot I gave everybody. When 217.20 breaks, you have to short it. It's a short. And continuous guidance by Win, right? Great idea. And I said 210 was a multi-day support. This support area was a multi-day. This 212 multi-day support. And people trying to bounce at 210, I said do not bounce. It's a D minus setup. Look at it. And they got destroyed if they bounce it. Nobody in my community, I keep teaching them. It hit 208. So anybody trying to buy the dips got demolished. 200 maybe, but not here, not against the trend. So it was a good guidance. You can see in Tesla, we saved people lose money in the long side and guided through the short side. Quickly want to discuss DKNG. It also was a loser today, did not work. Tried the breakout trade on it few times, but I failed. I tried to take this breakout and it failed. I gave it community and I stopped out here. So DKNG, whoever took this entry was better, but but if you take the bounce, it was a little tough. And so guys, there's a few more plays like Boeing I want to discuss, which worked because before of the pivots, but I'm short on the time, so I'm just gonna do a segment on tomorrow's plan. And this was for the recap. All right, guys, let's spend some time on tomorrow's outlook. So what can we do tomorrow? What's our plan for tomorrow? So tomorrow, guys, so as you see, let's look at a bigger picture here. Let's look at a bigger picture on everything. Let's look at a bigger picture on SPY. SPY is pretty bullish, right? There's a big breakout of SPY right over here that's setting up. Does it happen tomorrow? I don't know. You know, the yields, the rates are rising. So only the few biggies are taking it, you know, Apple, Microsoft, AMD, NVDA, Lilly, you know, all these stocks are taking a SPY higher, although a lot of names are still weak, right? So this doesn't show the reality of all the stocks. The big ones are strong, but anyway, so tomorrow, if it breaks out of this level of today's highs, you know, and breaks out over all-time highs, we will long it. Cautious if it rejects all-time highs. And if VIX bounces over 14, then also we have to be careful, you know. So we will see what it happens, but that's the plan. VIX over under 14, SPY over under today's level. Let's talk about some day two plays. So tomorrow we're focusing on day two plays, specifically HUM for a continuation over today's highs. We will watch DFS if it wants to fade more, you know, so that will be our day two setup. There's a lot of room for DFS to fade. It pops and it fades. We will focus there. Talking about NVIDIA, if it's not able to break 575, it's going to fade down. That's the key level. We will watch that 575. You know, AMD, again, if it stays under 160 area, 163s, you know, it's going to be a bearish bias. So we trade those accordingly. We'll keep eye on the whole semiconductor sector, right? I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but we will be ready for whatever happens. Boeing, let's see if the day three continuation in the gap. We did good on it today, so we'll keep eyes there. Microsoft, if SPY has to break out, it will be from Microsoft. Microsoft can easily touch 400 and it can take SPY with it, right? Let's talk about Tesla. So what do we want to do tomorrow with Tesla? So Tesla, I'm not really confident of the bounce yet. But if it stays over this 210, 211 level, then probably, you know, if it breaks that level and breaks, then I will not be interested. The level I will be interested will be this 210 level for Tesla to hold for the bounce and the scalps to the longs. Talking about IWM, if the yields are lower today, if the VIX fall down, I will be interested. IWM long over 50 EMA. And under the 50 EMA, I'll still be bearish, not interested. So that's my plan, guys, at high level for all these names. You know, Google not much. Apple, I already mentioned, we'll look for the continuations, and then some day two setups and day three setups we'll watch. Of course, fast we will watch for day two setups. So that was it, guys. Sorry for a little long video, but I appreciate it. I'll see you guys tomorrow.